He jumped down from the terrace. The sand was thick over his black shoes, and the heat hit him. He became conscious of the weight of clothes, kicked his shoes off fiercely, and ripped off each stocking with its elastic garter in a single movement. Then he leapt back on the terrace, pulled off his shirt, and stood there among the skull-like coconuts, with green shadows from the palms and the forest sliding over his skin. He undid the snake clasp of his belt, lugged off his shorts and pants, and stood there naked, looking at the dazzling beach and the water. Welcome to Positive Readings. That excerpt was from the opening of William Golding's 1954 novel, Lord of the Flies. This was also Golding's first novel, and probably his best-known novel. Before I get into this, though, I would like to invite everyone to check out this novel, Commuting. You can link to it in the description. It'd be greatly appreciated. Please check it out. Thank you. Lord of the Flies is a popular novel with middle school and maybe early high school students for a book that is commonly taught to young children. This is a very philosophical exploration at human nature and how that contributes to society, but is told in an interesting story, sort of an adventure, but also a serious conflict, maybe on the level that you get in Greek tragedy or Shakespeare. That passage that I was reading, this is the beginning of the story. So we have a group of schoolboys that have crashed down on an island that's kind of a satire of the Coral Island. And this was our hero, Ralph. He is kind of pulling off his clothes, throwing off civilization, and becoming a noble savage. He talks about they write about here these skull-like coconuts. So we already get the dark element coming in here. This description throughout the novel, when you see coconuts, for instance, later when Jack, as he's starting to turn a bit evil, is drinking out of a coconut, you can think of this skull, the skull-like coconut. And we have green shadows from the forest sliding over his skin. So we have this young schoolboy who's out of civilization now, and here is the forest with its charms and mysteries, but also its evil, literally taking over this boy. So and we also get a biblical allusion here, the snake clasp of his belt. So we have this kind of this Garden of Eden, this innocence that is going to fall shortly as the novel continues. The basic plot of this story: these schoolboys, they crash on an island. There's no adults. They quickly divide some kind of crude governance system, with a vote. There's two strong leaders here. There's Ralph and there's Jack. And Ralph is interested in rationality. How can we find a way to get off this island? We need to make a fire, keep the fire going. Whereas Jack is interested in getting food, meat, force, violence. How are we going to satisfy our needs? That's his focus. And of course, they end up clashing after this. Piggy, the only character who really stands by Ralph to the end, he has the glasses that provide their way of actually starting the fire, but he is destroyed, as many of the characters on this island are, if not actually killed. There's actually maybe 3 that actually get killed, but they're they're destroyed in the sense of they're no longer civilized. They become these savage characters by the end. In describing the theme or the kind of the main idea of this novel, Golden said this: "The theme is an attempt to trace the defects of society back to the defects of human nature. The moral is that the shape of a society must depend on the ethical nature of the individual and not any political system, however apparently logical or respectable." So the society is shaped by the individual, not the system that they're in. The whole book is symbolic in nature, except the rescue in the end, where adult life appears, dignified and capable, but in reality enmeshed in the same evil as the symbolic life of the children on the island. So the children's life on this island, it ends up becoming evil. They get saved by the adults who show up at the end. But, the idea is that we should see that these adults are also enmeshed. They're also stuck in this evil life as well. They're in the middle of a war. Developing this point a little further, Golden says, "The tenets of civilization, the moral and social codes, the ego, the intelligence itself, form only a veneer over this white-hot power, this uncontrollable force, the fury and the mire of human veins." So the tenets of civilization, like the kind of rules that we have, the discoveries, our intelligence, all these things that we think make us as humans great. This is just a veneer, according to him, that kind of covers over what he calls a white-hot power, an uncontrollable force, maybe Nietzsche's will to power, Freud's id, Schopenhauer's will. So this is this drive to kind of extend your will onto others, your drive to attain your desires, to have some kind of physical, forceful presence in the world. And that's the real evil here that's lying in all these characters. There's much made about the conch shell and the symbol that shell that has as a kind of a democratic tool, a way to bring people together, a way to devise who's speaking first and who's not. However, I think more interesting with this shell is it's an instrument, and they blow this horn, and this is what brings not only the children out of the forest, but it also brings the choir, this group of students wearing these black robes. They're described as a creature, and I don't think that's accidental. Again, I think this is maybe connecting music back to Dionysus and this idea that music, while it's wonderful, beautiful, it also takes us out kind of the immediate world. It has some kind of connection with evil and the chaos. So and that's really So blowing this horn, this is kind of a signal for letting the devil in. So the horn calls the children out of the forest, and then quickly the evilness, the fear, the anxiety of the forest, they bring with them, and they start to having nightmares, and they're afraid. They're afraid about things being out in the forest, and as they're having one of these discussions about, we don't have to worry about this, Jack lets him in on a interesting or introspective feeling that he has when he's out there. So he says, "All the same, in the forest, I mean when you're hunting, not when you're getting fruit, of course, but when you're on your own." And I think that's, again, the important part. When you're on your own and you're hunting, trying to kill something. He paused for a moment, not sure if Ralph would take him seriously. "Go on," that's Ralph. "If you're hunting, sometimes you catch yourself feeling as if..." He flushed suddenly. "There's nothing in it, of course, just a feeling, but you can feel as if you're not hunting, but being hunted, as if something's behind you all the time in the jungle. They were silent again. Simon intent, Ralph incredulous, and faintly indignant. So Ralph's upset that he's trying to calm these kids down, and here Jack is saying, oh no, there is something kind of out there. He sat up, rubbing one shoulder with a dirty hand. Well, I don't know. Jack leapt to his feet and spoke very quickly. That's how you can feel in the forest. Of course, there's nothing in it, only. So I think this is an important part, because that feeling, like you're out there hunting, but you feel like something is hunting you, that's that change that these characters are going through. As the more they go out and hunt, the more they try to kill, there's something that's kind of taken them over, and that's coming from within. It's not actually out in the forest. And that's what the so-called beast comments on later, a passage that we'll look at, that the real devil here is coming from within. Jack is kind of the brutal leader, but he's not as amoral, as sadistic as Roger. Roger, we can see early on, there's this great scene where Roger is watching this young boy, Henry, play, and Henry himself is watching these little creatures kind of, I think he calls them transparencies that kind of come in on the water, or come in as the waves are bringing in onto the beach. And Henry starts to try to control them, right? He says, this was fascinating to Henry. He poked about with a bit of stick that itself was wave-worn and whitened and a vagrant, and tried to control the motions of the scavengers. So he's trying to control these things that are coming in. He made little runnels that the tide filled and tried to crowd them with creatures. He became absorbed beyond mere happiness as he felt himself exercising control over living things. He talked to them, urging them, ordering them. Driven back by the tide, his footprints became bays in which they were trapped and gave him the illusion of mastery. So he's trapped these things, and he's, as he says here, he's feeling happy as he's exercising control over them. And as he's doing that, he's exercising his control of these little creatures. You've got Roger, who's back watching him in the forest, and he starts doing the same thing now to Henry. So he starts throwing rocks towards him. It says, he picked up a stone, aimed and threw it at Henry, threw it to miss. The stone, that token of preposterous time, bounced 5 yards to Henry's right and fell in the water. Roger gathered a handful of stones and began to throw them. Yet there was a space round Henry, perhaps 6 yards in diameter, into which he dare not throw. Here, invisible yet strong, was the taboo of the old life. Round the squatting child was the protection of parents and school and policemen and the law. Roger's arm was conditioned by a civilization that knew nothing of him and was in ruins. So Roger, as he's watching Henry exercise control over other beings, he's trying to do the same, but he's testing himself, throwing the rock out there. Can I, am I brave enough to hit him? He knows if he hits him with a rock, he could kill him. So he's testing himself, and he's going to, shortly after this, he'll be ready to kill. Once he kills a pig, he'll go on eventually to kill Piggy. And as it says here, Roger's arm was conditioned by a civilization. So he's conditioned not to do this evil because he's kind of grown up in this society, but this society knows nothing of him. It was in ruins because, again, they're in the middle of kind of a World War III, some hypothetical war that has happened. So this is just the remnants of the good culture that kept his evil nature in check, and now it's gone. Shortly after that scene, just maybe one page later, we have Jack, who discovers face paint, and this is a real liberating feeling, but also a push towards kind of, again, the dark side, that more evil nature in them. He turned a half-concealed face up to Roger. This is Jack. And answered the incomprehension of his gaze. For huntin', like in the war, dazzle paint, like things trying to look like something else. He twisted in the urgency of tellin', like moths on a tree trunk. And then later, he looked in astonishment no longer at himself, but at an awesome stranger. This is when Jack is seeing himself reflected in the water. He's become an awesome stranger. He spilt the water and leapt to his feet, laughing excitedly. Beside the pool, his sinewy body held up a mask that drew their eyes and appalled them. He began to dance, and his laughter became a bloodthirsty snarling. And again, the dance, I think, is that connection, that Dionysus connection of with the music and intoxication and losing yourself to your primal desires, which can often resemble evil. He capered toward Bill, and the mask was a thing on its own, behind which Jack hid, liberated from shame and self-consciousness. So with the mask, the paint, he's not himself anymore. He can do, say bad things. And this is kind of said in another way later on page 242, so near the end of the novel. It says, the others nodded. They understood only too well the liberation into savagery that the concealing paint brought. Liberation into savagery. So this no rules, no moral code holding you back, true freedom, that often brings terror into the world as well. After putting this face paint on, wearing these masks of paint, they actually have their first kill, and this is really kind of pushes the choir, this group, over the edge. The description of this is pretty brutal, also mixed with sexual imagery as well. Again, I think bringing us into this kind of Dionysian realm. It says, the hunters followed, wedded to her lust. They're talking about the her is the sow, the female pig, excited by the long chase and the dropped blood. They could see her now, nearly got up with her, but she spurted with her last strength and held ahead of them again. And then later, this dreadful eruption, they catch her, from an unknown world made her frantic. She squealed and bucked, and the air was full of sweat and noise and blood and terror. Roger ran around the heap, prodding with his spear whenever pig flesh appeared. Jack was on top of the sow, stabbing downward with his knife. Roger found a lodgment with his point and began to push till he was leaning with his whole weight. The spear moved forward inch by inch, and the terrified squealing became a high-pitched scream. So again, all this, a lot of details there, really kind of driving up the excitement, the horror of this. Then Jack found the throat, and the hot blood spouted over his hands. The sow collapsed under them, and they were heavy and fulfilled upon her. And again, that fulfilled, I think, is an allusion to the sexual imagery that's mixed throughout this passage. The butterflies still dance, preoccupied in the center of the clearing. So they've killed this thing. Jack gets the blood on his hands. Then Jack grabbed Maurice, rubbed the blood on his cheeks. Roger began to withdraw his spear. The boys noticed it for the first time. Robert stabilized the thing in a phrase which was received uproariously, right up her ass. So there's Roger, who I said is definitely sadistic. He shoved the spear kind of far up the backside of the pig. And then you got Jack kind of rubbing the blood all over everyone. So they've totally kind of lost it here, intoxicated by the hunt and the power of killing something else. So really becoming quite dangerous at this point. Another important character, which I haven't mentioned yet, is Simon. Simon is, they call him a bit batty. He faints, but he's the seer, the mystic of this group. He is strange. He goes off and kind of meditates. He has these hallucinations, a really important one where he's communicating with the severed head of the pig that's been put on a stick, which they call the beast, or he's calling the beast. Remember, the beast is the thing that they're afraid is going to come and get them at the night, which the hunters are going to promise to protect them from. Later, shortly after this scene that I'm going to read here, Simon is mistaken for the beast and killed. But in this scene where Simon is hallucinating and speaking with the beast, he has it all figured out. He realizes that it's just them scaring themselves. It's their evil that's coming out, and they need to kind of to chill out, to relax. One of the things they're also afraid of is a man parachuted onto, a dead man parachuted onto the island, and that's the thing they saw that they thought was a beast up on top of the mountain. "You are a silly little boy," said the Lord of the Flies. "Just an ignorant, silly little boy." Simon moved his swollen tongue, but said nothing. So again, this is his hallucination. He thinks the pig is saying this to him. Skipping over some parts here, he says, the beast, or Lord of the Flies. "Fancy thinking the beast was something you could hunt and kill," said the head. For a moment or two, the forest and all the other dimly appreciated places echoed with a parody of laughter. "You knew, didn't you? I'm part of you. Close, close, close. I'm the reason why it's no-go, why things are what they are." The laughter shivered again. So he's being told here that right, I'm part of you. This evil, this beast is inside of you, and you knew, Simon. And he's the mystic. He's the one that can see into the reality of things and hopefully give that message. But as he comes down off this mountain, just like Zarathustra, he's attacked for the knowledge he's trying to bring. And this is predicted in the same scene. The beast says, "This is ridiculous. You know perfectly well you'll only meet me down there. So don't try to escape." And down there is referring to down on the beach. And that's certainly what happens as he goes down there. So the message here is that the evil is inside. We need to find a way to, through society, to kind of put that at bay, to control it. Maybe this is a Hobbesian argument that we need this state apparatus. We need some kind of power structure to kind of put this evil at bay so it is under control. So after Simon is killed, all the hunters kind of go off on their own side. You have just Ralph and Piggy. Eventually the hunters have a raid on Piggy, steal his glasses so they can have the fire. So they have that element of civilization, but they are not living in a civilized way. Ralph and Piggy go there to try to get it back. Piggy is killed for that. And then this is really bringing us to the end where all the boys are basically trying to hunt down Ralph and kill him. Roger says he's going to sharpen a stick at both ends, a reference to the pig being put on the pike, and that's essentially what they're going to try to do to Ralph. And it ends like a Greek tragedy, the god coming down, right? The Deus Ex Machina, God in the machine. So Ralph's running, they're almost catching up with him, and he lands on the beach, and there the adult is, the soldier. Ralph looked at him dumbly. For a moment, he had a fleeting picture of the strange glamour that had once invested the beaches. But the island was scorched up like dead wood. Simon was dead, and Jack had. The tears began to flow, and sobs shook him. He gave himself up to them now for the first time on the island, great shuddering spasms of grief that seemed to wrench his whole body. His voice rose under the black smoke before the burning wreckage of the island, and infected by that emotion of the other little boys began to shake and sob too. And in the middle of them, with filthy body, matted hair, and unwiped nose, Ralph wept for the end of innocence, the darkness of man's heart, and the fall through the air of the true wise friend called Piggy. And that last scene there, the Ralph wept for the end of innocence. This seems to go against the message that Golden has, that there really isn't any innocence, that human nature is at core, maybe not evil, but definitely a serious problem that has proclivities to evil, and it's not innocent, and that really it's maybe ignorance that it appears to be innocent. So on the surface, Lord of the Flies seems like a fairly simple story, but again, it's exploring some deep philosophical questions, and for that, I think this is an excellent young adult book. It's a great novel for both being entertaining, but also really exploring some serious elements of human life. Thank you for listening.